I've got a bit of a bone to pick in today's video. I've been browsing eBay wanting to make a follow-up video to see if the Trashcan Mac Pro is worth it now. What is going on? Why is it so expensive? Today I want to see if we can figure this one out, get to the bottom of this little mystery. So a lot of great stuff happened at the end of 2019. The 16-inch MacBook Pro, which is right here and it's fantastic, and the Mac Pro, which is a huge upgrade, but the price is still debatable. But nonetheless, Apple was listening to people and they put out great products that people wanted and people bought them. You know how companies work? And what happened was people had their old products that they weren't as happy with and they said, this new product is very good and I think I shall buy it. And so then the value of their old products went down. Seems logical enough. In fact, I just made a video recently about the 16-inch MacBook Pro effect and how it basically tanked all the pricing for the 15-inch MacBook Pros that preceded it because this thing is so good. Now what's interesting is you'd think the same thing would happen with the Mac Pro. Now that there's a new high-power, high-performance Mac Pro with upgradability, with a whole bunch of stuff that we've been asking for, you'd think people would be ditching the Trashcan Mac Pros. And yet somehow they have not depreciated at all. And that makes me mad because here's the thing. The Trashcan Mac Pro, which I made a video on last year, is a troubled device, no doubt. It doesn't have a lot of upgradability. It's honestly not that powerful, but if it weren't for its overpriced nature, it would not be a bad idea. So let's go on eBay and see if we can figure out what's going on. All right, so let's set up an eBay search to filter for the Trashcan Mac Pros. All right, so we'll do release year of 2013. Let's go to the processor type and we'll do, actually, I guess we'll just check everything except for the non-specified. I really don't want to look at the quad core because here's the thing. The quad core Trashcan Mac Pro is an abomination. We'll talk about that in just a second. So let's see if this filters down and gives us just trash cans. Okay, here we go. Now we're talking. So let's take a look. Okay, first listing that's actually a Mac Pro. Let's open this one up here. All right, so $1,348. What are we going to get for that amount of money? Well, it looks like we're getting a 3.7 gigahertz quad-core Xeon, 32 gigs of RAM, 256 gigabyte SSD, and the base D300 graphics. What am I looking at here? Why in the world is this so expensive? Am I missing something? And here's the thing, okay, people are always commenting, oh, Macs are gonna be overpriced. That's just how they are. Macs are always overpriced. I don't disagree with you. Macs are definitely going to have a price premium. Whether that's worth it or not is up to you. The problem is if you want an Apple desktop for $1,300, you should buy an iMac. You can get a 5K iMac from 2015 or even 2017 with just as much RAM, probably more storage, also quad-core, but newer quad-core, more powerful quad-core processors. You gotta keep in mind, this is an Ivy Bridge Xeon. This thing is essentially going to be roughly equivalent to a Core i7 3770. That's what you would find in a 2012 iMac. I just don't understand how these computers are still commanding such a high price premium. So let's go back and look at some other listings here. Here is a 12-core model with the base graphics, 64 gigs of RAM, 1 terabyte NVMe, $2,000. See, the problem is in multi-threaded workloads, the 12-core processor can be outperformed by 6 and 8-core processors nowadays. So something like a 5K iMac for $2,000 is going to give you much better performance. I mean, if you just keep scrolling down this list, we've got a 6-core for $1,700 with 16 gigs of RAM and the 256 gigabyte SSD, $1,700. The craziest thing is that the performance on these things doesn't even make sense. They're comparable with MacBook Pros, not even Mac Pros anymore. It's just ridiculous that they're so expensive. I mean, these quad-core models are just, look, for $1,400 plus $22 shipping, 16 gigabytes of RAM, 250 gigabyte SSD. So this is probably the cheapest 12-core that I've seen, and it has 32 gigabytes of RAM, which is nice, but it has the base graphics, and we can't really upgrade those. I mean, you can, but it's not cost effective, and it requires basically completely disassembling the entire Mac Pro, and we'd still need to buy an SSD for this thing. So for $1,600, now the other thing you gotta keep in mind is these are Ivy Bridge era Xeon processors. So even the 12-core models, they might have some decent multi-threaded power, but the problem is single-threaded performance on these things isn't really that great. It would be roughly equivalent to the single-threaded performance that you'd get on like a 6 or 7-year-old iMac or a MacBook Pro. Now here's the other problem with the Mac Pro like this. A lot of times when I make a video about a used Mac, I like to bring up at least a discussion of how it compares to building your own PC, or more importantly, building a Mackintosh. Now with a lot of Macs, there is an argument to be made for convenience. With something like an iMac, you can build a PC for less, but a 5K iMac is a really compelling package because it works as a single unit plug and play. It's definitely a different sort of computer than a traditional tower. The problem is a Mac Pro kind of opens itself up to that argument, because even though, sure, the trash can is like this cool little cylinder thing, and it's kind of cool looking, I guess, it's still just a desktop tower. You still have a bunch of wires plugging in and a monitor and a keyboard and a mouse. So it's hard to make an argument that this is offering something that a Mackintosh isn't, aside from the fact that it's a natively supported Mac. Ivy Bridge Xeon workstations are absurdly cheap. They are ridiculously cheap. Let's give an example. Okay, so what I want to do right now is find a 6-core. Here we go. Let's take a look at this guy. So here we have a 6-core 2013 Mac Pro. Now, the processor that this computer uses is a Xeon E5 1650 V2. It's a 6-core 12-thread processor, 3.5 gigahertz. Spoiler alert, it's not that crazy. It's not that special. This is a Dell Precision T3610, and I bought it because it too has an Intel Xeon E5 1650 V2, 6-core 12-thread processor, clocked at 3.5 gigahertz. And do you know how much I paid for this entire computer? $150. Now granted, it's not a completely apples to apples comparison, because this computer has the same processor, but it only has 8 gigs of RAM. It has this dinky little Quadro K600 card, and it didn't even come with a hard drive, so I'm gonna have to add one of those. But the thing is, this was $1,550 less than this guy's asking for this Mac Pro. So what? Now my goal for this workstation is to build a ridiculously cheap Mackintosh that renders the 2013 Mac Pro completely obsolete and unnecessary. Now it's the first time I've actually built a Mackintosh, so I'm not really sure what to expect or how long it'll take. Don't expect a video on this like in the coming weeks. It's gonna be a little while. I've got to order parts, build this thing up, figure out how to Mackintosh a computer, and then try and get this as functional as I can. So it's going to be a bit of a process. In fact, if any of you guys have experience working on Dell Precisions or know of any threads that might help me, feel free to leave those in the comments below. I'm new to this. I've never done this before, but I was so motivated by the outrageousness of the pricing of these trash can Mac Pros that I said, screw it, we're going to do it. So yeah, this is one of those moments where I am fully on board with the you can build a PC for less. Even if I don't end up Mackintoshing that computer, $150 for that 6-core processor and all that upgradability, like that thing has built into it 2 8-pin connectors, so you could put in up to 300 watts of graphics card. Like, it's a solid and upgradable machine. So I just can't fathom why these old Mac Pros haven't depreciated a lot yet. Side note, if you're looking for a cheap gaming computer, I feel like those Dell Precisions are not a bad way to go. Like if we take a look at these things are ridiculously cheap. You can buy them all over the place. Here, this one has, I think that's probably a quad core. Here's another one. This one is the quad core. That's the E5 1620 V2. That's the exact same as the quad core Mac Pro. $140. These things are actually really versatile, so if you're looking for a cheap gaming computer, this is honestly a really good way to go. Just throw in a graphics card and an SSD and you're pretty much set. So is there any scenario in which the Trashcan Mac Pro is worth it? If I had to explain why I think it is, it's probably because those Mac Pros, even the highest end ones, really aren't competing with the 2019 Mac Pro. The Mac Pro, even the 8-core base model Mac Pro, is going to slot in way above even the 12-core Mac Pros from 2013. So if I had to guess, I'd say it's probably different enough and far away enough from the new Mac Pro that it's not having a ton of effect on the value, and people aren't really upgrading to the new one if they have the trash can. So that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As usual, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Luke Miani, and please consider joining my subreddit if you have any questions. And with that, I'll see you all in the next video.